The hallway was dark when Gilbert pushed open the back door of Westbrook Middle School. It was 5:30 in the morning. The sun had not come up yet. The building was completely silent. He liked it this way. Gilbert had been working as a janitor at this school for 11 years. Every single day, he arrived before anyone else. He unlocked the doors. He turned on the lights. He made sure the building was ready before the first teacher walked in. And every single evening, he was the last one to leave. That was his life. Quiet, invisible, alone. He walked down the empty hallway, his footsteps echoing against the walls. The mop bucket rolled beside him, making a soft squeaking sound. He stopped at the first classroom and looked inside. The chairs were still on top of the desks from when he put them there last night. He pulled them down one by one. 32 chairs. He had done this so many times that he did not even think about it anymore. His hands just moved on their own. When he finished, he moved to the next room, then the next, then the next. By 7 o'clock, the whole school was ready. The floors were clean, the trash cans were empty, the bathrooms smelled fresh, everything was in its place. Gilbert sat down on a bench near the main entrance and waited. Soon the teachers would arrive. Then the students. The building would fill up with noise and laughter and chaos, and he would disappear. That was the strange thing about his job. When the school was empty, he felt like he owned the place. But the moment people showed up, he became invisible. Like he was not even there. The first teacher walked past him without looking up. She was checking something on her phone. A group of students ran through the doors, talking loudly about some video game. They did not notice him sitting there. The principal walked by and gave him a small nod. But Gilbert knew she did not remember his name. Nobody did. He was 62 years old. He had gray hair and deep lines on his face. His back hurt most days. His knees were not what they used to be. But he kept working because he did not know what else to do. 3 years ago, everything changed for him. That was when his wife passed away. Her name was Eleanor. She had been a music teacher at a different school across town. She loved the piano more than anything in the world. Every evening when Gilbert came home from work, she would be sitting at the old piano in their living room, playing something beautiful. He would stand in the doorway and just listen. He never told her how much those moments meant to him. He thought he had all the time in the world to say it. He was wrong. The cancer came fast. By the time the doctors found it, there was nothing they could do. She was gone within 4 months. After she died, Gilbert stopped talking to people. He stopped smiling. He went to work, came home, sat alone in the quiet house, and waited for the next day to begin. The piano in the living room collected dust. He could not bring himself to touch it. He had no children. His parents were gone. His only brother lived in another country and they had not spoken in years. There was nobody left. The school became his whole world. But in that world, he was a ghost. He ate his lunch alone every day in the small room behind the boiler. It was warm in there, and nobody ever came looking for him. He would sit on an old chair, eat his sandwich, and look at the same photograph he always carried in his pocket. It was a picture of Eleanor sitting at a piano. She was smiling at the camera. Her fingers were resting on the keys like she was about to play something wonderful. Sometimes he talked to the photograph. He knew it was silly, but it made him feel less alone. The students at Westbrook were not bad kids. Most of them were just busy with their own lives. They worried about homework and friends and social media and all the things young people worry about. They did not have time to notice the old man pushing a mop down the hallway. Gilbert understood that. He did not blame them. Sometimes he would see a kid sitting alone at lunch, looking sad. He would walk over quietly and leave a granola bar on the table without saying anything. The kid would look up, surprised, but Gilbert would already be walking away. He never wanted credit for these small acts of kindness. He just knew what it felt like to be hungry and alone. Other times, he would notice a teacher struggling to carry a heavy box of books. He would appear out of nowhere, take the box from their hands, and carry it wherever it needed to go. The teacher would say thank you. But by the next day, they would forget his face. He fixed broken lockers that the maintenance budget could not cover. He cleaned up messes that were not his responsibility. He stayed late to make sure the gym was ready for basketball games, even though nobody asked him to. He did all of this because it was the right thing to do. Not because he expected anything in return, but sometimes it hurt. There was one day last winter when he slipped on some ice outside the school and fell hard on his side. He lay there for a few minutes, trying to catch his breath. 3 students walked right past him. They did not stop. They did not ask if he was okay. They just kept walking like he was not even there. He got up slowly, brushed the snow off his coat, and went back to work. That night, he sat alone in his house and thought about his life. He thought about all the years he had spent taking care of this school, all the floors he had cleaned, all the messes he had fixed, all the broken things he had repaired. He looked around his small living room. The walls were covered with old photographs. Most of them showed Eleanor. Eleanor, at their wedding. Eleanor at the beach. Eleanor laughing at something he said. Eleanor at the piano, always at the piano. The instrument still sat in the corner of the room. It was covered with a white sheet now. He could not stand to look at it. Every time he saw those black and white keys, he remembered her fingers dancing across them. He remembered the way she would close her eyes when she played something sad. He remembered how she would turn to him and smile when she finished a piece. Those memories were too painful. So he covered the piano and tried to forget, but forgetting was impossible. Gilbert picked up the photograph from the table beside him, the one he always carried to work. He stared at her face for a long time. "I miss you," he whispered. "I miss you every single day." The house was so quiet. No music. No laughter. Just silence. He wondered if any of his work mattered. He wondered if anyone would even notice, if he just stopped showing up one day. The answer, he decided, was probably no. But Gilbert kept coming back. Every morning at 5:30. Every evening until the lights went out. Because the truth was, he had nowhere else to go. The school was the only place where he felt like he had a purpose, even if nobody saw it. He was wrong about one thing, though. He thought he was invisible to everyone, but there was one person who saw him. One 12-year-old girl who noticed everything he did. She saw him polish the trophy case every Tuesday. She saw him slip food to the kids, who could not afford lunch. She saw him stay late to help teachers carry heavy boxes without ever asking for thanks. She watched him for months, and she never said a word. Not yet, because she was waiting for the right moment. She was working on something. A plan that would change everything. She had seen him crying once. Behind the gymnasium, when he thought nobody was around. He was holding that photograph. The one of the woman at the piano. His shoulders were shaking and tears were running down his face. The girl had walked away quietly that day. She did not want to embarrass him. But she could not stop thinking about what she saw. She could not stop thinking about the lonely old man who gave so much and received nothing in return. That night, she made a decision. A decision that would bring an entire auditorium to tears. A decision that would remind one broken man that he was never really invisible at all. But Gilbert did not know that. He had no idea that his whole life was about to turn upside down because of a quiet girl with a gift for music and a heart bigger than anyone knew. For now, he just kept working, pushing his mop down the empty hallway, waiting for another day to end, thinking that nobody cared. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. May was 12 years old and she did not fit in. She knew this about herself. She had known it for a long time. While other girls her age talked about clothes and makeup and boys, May spent her lunch breaks sitting alone near the music room. She did not have a phone. She did not care about social media. She barely spoke to anyone unless she had to. Some kids thought she was strange. Others thought she was stuck up. The truth was much simpler than that. May was just afraid. She had learned early in life that people leave. Her father left when she was 4. Her mother left when she was 8. Now she lived with her grandmother in a small apartment on the other side of town. Her grandmother loved her, but she was old and tired and worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. May had decided a long time ago that it was easier not to get close to anyone. If you did not let people in, they could not hurt you when they walked away. So she kept to herself. She watched the world from a distance. And she noticed things that other people missed, like the old janitor who arrived before dawn every morning. The first time May really saw him was on a cold day in October. She had come to school early because her grandmother had to catch an early bus to work. The building was supposed to be empty, but when May walked past the cafeteria, she saw a light on inside. She stopped and looked through the window. There was the janitor, down on his hands and knees, scrubbing something off the floor. His face was tired but focused. He worked slowly and carefully, like he actually cared about getting it right. May watched him for a few minutes. Then she walked away without saying anything. But after that day, she started noticing him everywhere. She saw him in the hallways, pushing his mop bucket from room to room. She saw him outside, picking up trash that students had thrown on the ground. She saw him fixing a broken water fountain that had been leaking for weeks. Nobody thanked him. Nobody even looked at him. He was like a shadow moving through the school. But May looked. And the more she watched, the more she saw. She saw him leave food for the hungry kids. There was a boy in her class named Derek, who never had money for lunch. His clothes were always wrinkled, and his shoes had holes in them. One day, May saw the janitor walk past Derek's table and quietly set down a granola bar and an apple. He did not say a word. He just kept walking like nothing happened. Derek looked up, confused. But the old man was already gone. May saw him help a teacher who dropped a whole stack of papers in the hallway. The papers went everywhere, flying in all directions. Students walked right past without stopping, but the janitor got down on his knees and helped pick up every single page. The teacher barely said thank you before hurrying off to class. The janitor just nodded and went back to his work. She saw him stay late after a basketball game to clean up the gym. The players and coaches left as soon as the game ended. The janitor was there for another 2 hours, sweeping the floors, wiping down the bleachers, taking out the trash. May knew this because she had stayed late for piano practice and saw his truck still in the parking lot when she finally left. He did so much for this school, and nobody seemed to care. May understood that feeling. She knew what it was like to feel invisible. She knew what it was like to give and never receive anything back. She knew what it was like to be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. Maybe that was why she felt connected to him, even though they had never spoken a single word to each other. There was one thing about May that most people did not know. One thing that set her apart from everyone else at Westbrook Middle School. She could play the piano. Not just play it, she could make it sing. Her grandmother had saved for years to buy an old keyboard from a secondhand store. It was missing 2 keys, and the sound was a little off. But May did not care. From the moment she touched those keys, she knew she had found something special. She taught herself at first, watching videos online and practicing for hours every day. Then her music teacher at school heard her playing and nearly fell over in shock. Within a month, May had a scholarship to study with a real piano teacher downtown. Within a year, she was winning competitions against kids twice her age. Everyone said she was a prodigy, a natural talent, a gift from heaven. May did not think about it that way. To her, the piano was simply the only place where she felt safe. When she played, the world disappeared. The loneliness went away. The fear melted into nothing. It was just her and the music. Speaking a language that did not need words, she had been accepted into a famous summer music program in another city. It was a huge honor. Her grandmother cried when she found out. But May felt strange about it. She was proud, yes, but she also felt like something was missing. She had all this talent, all this ability to make people feel things through music. But what was she doing with it? Playing in empty rooms, practicing alone, hiding from the world. What was the point of having a gift if you never used it to help anyone? That question stayed with her for weeks. She did not have an answer. Then, one afternoon in early spring, everything changed. May had stayed late to practice in the music room. When she finished, it was almost 5 o'clock. The hallways were empty and quiet. Most of the teachers had gone home. She walked toward the back exit, taking a shortcut behind the gymnasium. That was when she heard it. A sound that made her stop in her tracks. Someone was crying. May hesitated. She knew she should probably keep walking. It was not her business. But something made her move closer. She crept along the wall until she could see around the corner, and there he was. The janitor. The invisible man who helped everyone and received nothing in return. He was sitting on an old wooden crate behind the building, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. In his hands, he held a photograph. May could not see the picture clearly from where she stood. But she could see enough. It showed a woman sitting at a piano. A woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. The janitor touched the photograph with his finger, tracing the outline of the woman's face. His lips moved like he was saying something. But no sound came out. Just tears. Tears that rolled down his wrinkled cheeks and fell onto the dusty ground. May felt her heart break into 1,000 pieces. She did not know who the woman was. She did not know the story behind the photograph. But she understood grief. She understood loss. She understood what it felt like to miss someone so much that it physically hurt. She wanted to walk over and say something. Anything. But what could she say? She was just a kid. A stranger. She did not even know his name, so she backed away quietly, making sure he did not see her. She walked home in silence, her mind racing with thoughts she could not organize. That night, May could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the old man and his photograph. Thinking about all the kindness he showed to people who never noticed him. Thinking about how alone he must feel every single day, and she thought about her gift. The piano. The music that lived inside her. Suddenly, an idea began to form in her mind. A crazy idea. An impossible idea. The kind of idea that would require her to do something she had never done before. It would require her to stop hiding. May sat up in bed, her heart pounding. She did not know if she could do it. She did not know if she was brave enough, but she knew one thing for certain. That man deserved to know that someone saw him. Someone cared. Someone noticed every single act of kindness he thought went unwitnessed, and she was going to find a way to show him, no matter what it took. The next morning, May woke up with a purpose she had never felt before. She had spent half the night thinking about the janitor and his photograph, the woman at the piano, the tears on his face, the way he held that picture like it was the most precious thing in the world. She needed to know more. She needed to understand his story before she could figure out how to help him. But where would she even start? May got ready for school in a hurry. Her grandmother noticed something different about her that morning. Usually May moved slowly, dragging her feet, dreading another day of loneliness. But today her eyes were bright, and her steps were quick. "You seem happy today," her grandmother said with a tired smile. May just shrugged. "I have something I need to do." She did not explain further. She was not even sure how to explain it to herself. At school, May started paying even closer attention to the janitor. She watched where he went. She listened when teachers talked to him. She tried to pick up any small detail that might help her understand who he was. His name was Gilbert. She learned that from hearing the principal say it once in the hallway. Gilbert. It was an old-fashioned name. It suited him somehow. But that was not enough. She needed to know about the woman in the photograph. The woman at the piano. After school that day, May went to the library. She sat down at one of the old computers in the corner and started searching. She typed in the name of the school and the word janitor. Nothing useful came up. She tried different combinations of words, but everything led to dead ends. She was about to give up when she had another idea. The woman in the photograph was sitting at a piano. What if she was a musician? What if she had taught music somewhere? May searched for music teachers in the area. She scrolled through dozens of names and faces, looking for someone who matched the woman in the photograph. It was hard because she had only seen the picture from a distance, but she remembered the kind eyes, the gentle smile, the way her fingers rested on the keys. After almost an hour of searching, May found something. An old newspaper article from 6 years ago. It was about a music school across town that was celebrating its anniversary. There was a group photo of all the teachers, and in the back row stood a woman who looked exactly like the one in Gilbert's photograph. Her name was Eleanor Chen. She had taught piano at the school for over 20 years. May's heart started beating faster. She kept reading. The article mentioned that Eleanor was known for her patience and kindness. Students loved her. She had a gift for helping even the most struggling beginners find joy in music. She was also a composer who had written several pieces for her students to perform. Then May found another article. This one was different. It was an obituary. Eleanor Chen had passed away 3 years ago after a battle with cancer. She was survived by her husband of 35 years, a man named Gilbert, who worked as a custodian at a local middle school. May sat back in her chair and felt tears forming in her eyes. Now she understood. Now everything made sense. The sadness in his eyes, the photograph he carried everywhere, the way he seemed to move through life like a ghost. He had lost the love of his life, and he was still grieving. May wiped her eyes and kept reading. She needed to find something more, something she could use to help him. At the bottom of the obituary, there was a small note. It said that Eleanor had been working on an original composition before she passed. The piece was called Still Here, and it had never been performed publicly. Still Here. Those 2 words hit May like a wave. She could almost hear the title being whispered in her ear. A message from a wife to her husband. A promise that love does not end just because someone is gone. She had to find that music. The next few days were a blur of research and phone calls. May found the number for the music school where Eleanor had taught. She called after school, her hands shaking as she held the phone. A woman answered. May explained who she was and what she was looking for. She told the woman about Gilbert, about how lonely he seemed, about how she wanted to do something special for him. At first, the woman was hesitant. She asked a lot of questions, but something in May's voice must have convinced her, because eventually, she agreed to help. Eleanor was a wonderful woman, the woman said softly. She talked about her husband all the time. She loved him more than anything. 2 days later, May received a package in the mail. Inside was a folder containing several pages of handwritten sheet music. The notes were written in pencil, slightly faded, with small markings and corrections in the margins. At the top of the first page, in elegant handwriting, were the words, "Still Here." May held the papers like they were made of gold. This was Eleanor's final gift. A song she had written for Gilbert, but never got to share with him. And now May was going to bring it to life. She started practicing that same night. She set up her old keyboard in her bedroom and began working through the piece note by note. It was hard. Much harder than anything she had ever played before. The song was beautiful but complicated. It had sections that required her fingers to move faster than she thought possible. It had quiet moments that needed perfect control, and loud sections that demanded strength and emotion. It was the kind of music that could break your heart and put it back together at the same time. May practiced for 3 hours that first night. By the end, her fingers were sore and her back was aching, but she did not care. She practiced again the next day, and the day after that. Every spare moment she had, she spent at the keyboard, working through the difficult passages, trying to capture the feeling behind each note. Her grandmother noticed the change. "You are practicing more than ever," she said one evening. "Is something going on?" May hesitated. Then she told her grandmother everything. The janitor, the photograph, Eleanor's music, the plan that was forming in her mind. Her grandmother listened without interrupting. When May finished, the old woman had tears in her eyes. "You have a good heart," she said. "Your mother would be proud." Those words gave May the courage she needed for the next step. The school talent show was coming up in 3 weeks. It was the biggest event of the year. Hundreds of people would be there. Students, teachers, parents, everyone. May had never performed in front of a crowd before. The thought of it made her feel sick to her stomach, but she knew this was her chance. She went to the principal's office after school and asked to speak with her. The secretary looked surprised. May had never asked for a meeting before. The principal was a busy woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She invited May to sit down and asked what she wanted. May took a deep breath and explained her plan. She told the principal about Gilbert, and how invisible he seemed to everyone. She told her about Eleanor, and the unperformed song. She asked if the talent show could include a special moment to honor the janitor who had served the school for so many years. The principal listened carefully. At first, her face was hard to read, but as May kept talking, something in her expression began to soften. "You want to play his wife's music," the principal said slowly. "In front of the whole school." May nodded. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The principal was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. "I think that is a beautiful idea," she said. "Let me make some phone calls." Over the next week, the plan grew bigger than May had ever imagined. The principal reached out to teachers and asked them to share stories about Gilbert. She contacted former students who had graduated years ago. She arranged for a special invitation to be sent to Gilbert, asking him to attend the talent show as an honored guest. Gilbert had no idea what was coming. He thought the invitation was some kind of mistake. He almost threw it in the trash. But something made him hold on to it. Something made him decide to show up. Meanwhile, May kept practicing. 6 hours a day. 7 hours. Her fingers blistered and healed, and blistered again. She played the song so many times that she heard it in her dreams. She was terrified. She had never done anything this brave in her entire life. But every time she thought about quitting, she remembered the old man crying behind the gymnasium. She remembered the photograph clutched in his hands. She remembered the title of the song, "Still Here." She was going to make sure he heard those words. Not just with his ears, but with his heart. The night before the talent show, May could not sleep. She lay awake in the darkness, running through the music in her mind. Tomorrow, everything would change. For both of them, Gilbert stood outside the school auditorium holding a crumpled piece of paper in his hand. The invitation had arrived in his mailbox 3 days ago. It was printed on fancy paper, with gold letters, that said he was invited to attend the spring talent show as a special guest. His name was written at the top, in careful handwriting. He had read it 5 times. He still did not understand why anyone would invite him. For 3 days, he went back and forth about whether to go. Part of him wanted to throw the paper away and forget about it. He did not belong at events like this. He was just the janitor. Nobody wanted him sitting in the audience with all the parents and important people. But another part of him was curious. Why would someone send him this? Was it a mistake? Or was there something more going on? In the end, he decided to go. He put on his cleanest shirt. He combed his gray hair. He even polished his old shoes that he usually only wore to church. Now he stood at the entrance of the auditorium, feeling completely out of place. The room was already filling up with people. Parents were finding seats and chatting with each other. Students were running around backstage, nervous and excited. Teachers stood in small groups, laughing about something Gilbert could not hear. Nobody noticed him standing there. That was normal. That was how it always was. He was about to turn around and leave when a voice stopped him. "Mr. Gilbert." He turned and saw the principal walking toward him with a warm smile on her face. She was wearing a nice dress and her hair was done up fancy. She looked like she was going to a wedding, not a school talent show. "I am so glad you came," she said. "Please, follow me. We have a special seat for you." Gilbert opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. The principal gently took his arm and led him down the center aisle. People were looking at him now. Parents he did not recognize. Teachers he had worked alongside for years. They were all watching him walk toward the front of the room. His face turned red. He wanted to disappear. What was happening? Why was everyone staring? The principal brought him to the very first row. Right in the center. The best seat in the house. "Sit here," she said kindly, "and enjoy the show." Before Gilbert could ask any questions, she walked away and disappeared backstage. He sat down slowly, his heart beating fast. The seat next to him was empty. All around him, people whispered and pointed. He could feel their eyes on him like heat from a fire. This was a mistake. It had to be a mistake. He should leave right now, before things got even more strange. But before he could stand up, the lights dimmed. The auditorium went quiet. A spotlight appeared on the stage, bright and white. The principal walked out with a microphone in her hand. "Good evening, everyone," she said. "Welcome to the Westbrook Middle School Spring Talent Show." The crowd clapped politely. Gilbert clapped too, though his hands were shaking. "Before we begin tonight's performances, I want to do something special," the principal continued. "Something that is long overdue." She paused and looked directly at Gilbert. "Most of you know that our school is more than just a building. It is a community. A family. And every family has people who work behind the scenes to keep things running. People who never ask for recognition. People who never expect a thank you. People who give and give and give, without wanting anything in return." Gilbert felt his stomach drop. She was talking about him. She had to be talking about him. "Tonight, we want to honor one of those people," the principal said. "A man who has worked at this school for over 11 years. A man who arrives before dawn and leaves after dark. A man who has touched more lives than he will ever know." She smiled and extended her hand toward him. "Mr. Gilbert, would you please stand up?" Gilbert did not move. He could not move. His legs felt like they were made of stone. The crowd began to clap. Slowly at first, then louder. Someone whistled. Someone else cheered. Finally, Gilbert forced himself to stand. His whole body was trembling. The principal nodded at someone backstage, and suddenly the big screen behind her lit up. A photograph appeared. It showed Gilbert from years ago, standing in front of the school with a mop in his hand. He remembered that day. It was his first week on the job. He looked so much younger then. Then another photograph appeared. Gilbert fixing a broken locker. Gilbert cleaning up after a basketball game. Gilbert helping a teacher carry boxes. Gilbert giving food to a student who looked hungry. The pictures kept coming. Dozens of them. Moments he did not even know anyone had captured. Moments he thought nobody had seen. Tears began to form in his eyes. Then the slideshow changed. Instead of photographs, words appeared on the screen. Testimonies. Messages from people whose lives he had touched. A message from a teacher. "Gilbert fixed my classroom door when the maintenance department said it would take 3 weeks. He did it the same day," I asked. "He never wanted credit. He just wanted to help." A message from a former student, now in college. "I was the kid who never had lunch money. Mr. Gilbert used to leave food on my table when he thought I was not looking. He probably saved my life. I never got to thank him." A message from another teacher. "Gilbert stayed late every single night for a whole month when we were preparing for state inspections. He never complained. He never asked for overtime. He just did what needed to be done." The messages kept coming. One after another. People Gilbert barely remembered. People he had helped without thinking twice about it. The tears were flowing freely now. He did not try to stop them. The principal waited until the last message faded from the screen. Then she spoke again. "Mr. Gilbert, you have spent 11 years believing that nobody noticed you. 11 years thinking that nobody cared." She shook her head slowly. "You were wrong." The crowd erupted into applause. Everyone stood up. A standing ovation for the janitor, who had never expected anything. Gilbert covered his face with his hands. He could not believe this was happening. He could not believe that all these people had been paying attention all along. But the principal was not finished. "We have one more surprise for you tonight," she said when the applause died down. "A very special performance by one of our students." Gilbert wiped his eyes and looked at the stage. A small figure walked out from behind the curtain. A 12-year-old girl with long black hair and nervous eyes. She was wearing a simple blue dress that looked like it had been borrowed from someone older. Gilbert recognized her. She was the quiet girl who always sat alone near the music room. The one who never talked to anyone. The one who kept to herself just like he did. Why was she here? What did she have to do with any of this? The girl walked slowly toward the grand piano that sat in the center of the stage. Her hands were shaking. Her face was pale. She looked terrified. She sat down on the bench and adjusted the microphone that was attached to the piano. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft and trembling, but every word was clear. "My name is May," she said. And I want to tell you about a woman named Eleanor. Gilbert stopped breathing. Eleanor was a music teacher, May continued. She spent her whole life helping students find the joy in music. She was kind and patient, and loved by everyone who knew her. Gilbert's heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Eleanor was also a composer. Before she passed away, she wrote one final piece of music, a song for someone she loved more than anything in the world. A song that was never performed. Until tonight. May looked directly at Gilbert. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her voice was steady. This song is called Still Here. And it was written by Eleanor Chen for her husband Gilbert. The auditorium went completely silent. Gilbert felt the world spinning around him. He gripped the armrest of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. Eleanor. His Eleanor. She had written him a song. A song he never knew existed. A song she never got to play for him. And now this girl, this stranger, this quiet child who had noticed him when nobody else did, was about to bring his wife's final gift to life. May took a deep breath. She placed her fingers on the piano keys, and she began to play. The first note floated through the auditorium like a whisper, soft, gentle, almost too quiet to hear. Then came the second note, and the third. And slowly, a melody began to take shape. It was delicate and tender, like a hand reaching out in the darkness to find someone it loved. Gilbert knew this music. He did not know how that was possible. He had never heard this song before. Eleanor had never played it for him. But somehow, deep in his bones, he recognized it. It sounded like her. It sounded like the way she laughed when he told a bad joke. It sounded like the way she hummed while cooking dinner. It sounded like the way she whispered goodnight before they fell asleep. It sounded like 35 years of love poured into notes and chords and melodies. Gilbert's hand flew to his mouth. The tears came so fast he could not stop them. They poured down his face and dripped onto his shirt, but he did not care. He did not care about anything except the music filling the room. May played with her eyes closed. Her fingers danced across the keys like they had a mind of their own. All those hours of practice, all those blisters and aches, and sleepless nights, had led to this moment. She was not just playing notes on a page, she was delivering a message from a woman who had run out of time to say everything she wanted to say. The melody grew stronger. It swelled and rose like a wave building in the ocean. There was sadness in the music. Yes, the sadness of goodbye. The sadness of knowing that time was running out, but there was something else too, something stronger than sadness. There was hope. The song seemed to say that love does not end when someone dies. It does not disappear when a heart stops beating. It stays. It remains. It echoes through the years like a song that never stops playing. Still here. I am still here. Gilbert could almost hear Eleanor's voice in the music. He could almost see her sitting at the piano, her fingers moving across the keys, her eyes closed in concentration. He could almost feel her presence beside him, warm and real and alive. For the first time in 3 years, he did not feel alone. The auditorium was completely silent. Not a single person moved. Not a single person breathed. Everyone was caught in the spell of the music, watching the old janitor weep in the front row, while a 12-year-old girl played her heart out on stage. Teachers had tears streaming down their faces. Parents held hands and wiped their eyes. Even the students, who usually fidgeted and whispered during school events, sat perfectly still. They all understood what they were witnessing. This was not just a talent show performance. This was something sacred, something beautiful, something that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. May reached the final section of the song. Her fingers moved faster now, the notes tumbling over each other like water rushing downstream. The music built and built, reaching toward something just out of sight. Then, at the very peak, everything stopped. One long pause, one held breath, one frozen moment, and then the final chord. It rang out through the auditorium, rich and full and perfect. It hung in the air like a prayer, like a promise, like a love letter written in sound, instead of words. Then silence. For a moment, Nobody moved. The last echo of the piano faded into nothing, and the room remained completely still. Then Gilbert stood up. His legs were shaking. His face was soaked with tears. But he stood up anyway, and he began to clap. One person clapping in a silent room. Then another person stood. And another. And another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet. The applause was deafening. People cheered and cried and hugged each other. The standing ovation went on, wave after wave of love and gratitude washing over the stage. But May did not notice the crowd. She only had eyes for one person. She stood up from the piano bench and walked to the edge of the stage. Gilbert walked toward her at the same time, moving like a man in a dream. They met at the stairs, the old man and the young girl, the lonely janitor and the shy pianist, two invisible people who had finally been seen. Gilbert tried to speak, but no words would come. His throat was too tight, his heart was too full. So instead, he simply opened his arms. May fell into them like she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. They held each other while the crowd roared around them. Two strangers, who were not strangers at all. Two broken souls, who had somehow found each other in the darkness. "Thank you," Gilbert finally managed to whisper. "Thank you." May pulled back and looked up at him. Her face was wet with tears, but she was smiling. Really smiling. "For the first time in years, she wanted you to hear it," she said softly. "She wanted you to know that she is still here. She never left you. She never will." Gilbert nodded. He could not speak anymore, but he understood. Eleanor was gone. He would never hold her hand again. He would never hear her laugh, or see her smile, or fall asleep next to her warmth. But her love remained. It was in the song she had written. It was in the music that still echoed in his heart. It was in this moment, right here, right now, surrounded by people who had finally seen him for who he really was. He was not invisible. He had never been invisible. He had just forgotten how to look. The principal walked over and handed Gilbert a small plaque. It was made of polished wood with gold lettering that said, "To Gilbert Chen, the heart of Westbrook. Thank you for 11 years of service, kindness, and love." Gilbert held the plaque against his chest and cried some more. Happy tears this time. Grateful tears. The crowd finally began to settle down. People returned to their seats. The talent show continued with other performances. But nobody really paid attention. Everyone was still thinking about what they had just witnessed. After the show ended, dozens of people came up to Gilbert. Students he had helped without expecting thanks. Teachers he had worked alongside for years. Parents who had heard stories about the kind janitor who went above and beyond. They all wanted to shake his hand. They all wanted to say thank you. They all wanted him to know that he mattered. But the moment that changed everything came later that night. May was sitting alone outside the auditorium, waiting for her grandmother to pick her up. Gilbert walked over and sat down beside her. For a while, they just sat in silence. Two people who did not need words to understand each other. Then Gilbert spoke. "You have no idea what you did for me tonight," he said quietly. "You gave me my wife back. Even just for a few minutes. You let me hear her voice one more time." May nodded. "She must have loved you very much." "She did." Gilbert paused. "And I never told her enough how much I loved her back. I thought I had more time." Note. He turned to look at the young girl beside him. This child who had lost her parents. This child who lived with her grandmother and played piano in empty rooms. This child who saw an invisible man and decided to make him visible again. "You remind me of her," he said. "Eleanor? I mean, she had the same gift. The same heart." May did not know what to say. Nobody had ever said anything like that to her before. Gilbert reached into his pocket and pulled out the photograph. The one he carried everywhere. The one of Eleanor at the piano. He handed it to May. "I want you to have this," he said. May's eyes went wide. "I cannot take this. It is yours. It is all you have left of her." Gilbert shook his head. "No. She is not in a photograph. She is in the music. You showed me that tonight." May held the photograph carefully, like it might break in her hands. "Besides," Gilbert said with a small smile, "I have a feeling I am going to be seeing a lot more of you from now on." And he was right. 3 months later, Gilbert officially adopted May. Her grandmother, who was getting too old to care for a child alone, gave her blessing with tears of joy. The court approved the adoption without hesitation. Gilbert finally had a family again. May finally had a father who would never leave. And every evening, their small house filled with the sound of piano music. Sometimes happy, sometimes sad. Always beautiful. Eleanor's song played on, passed from one generation to the next. A reminder that love never really dies. It just finds new ways to be heard. Still here, always still here.